So this is what we will be creating. It is an ice cube with a texture that becomes more frozen. So we'll kind of walk through this ice cube shape. Pretty simple. That texture that slowly freezes, and then also talk about the background and lighting setup. So let's get into it. Under File, Plain Jane. I'm going to go ahead and delete the camera and the light. And now we have this cube that I'm going to go ahead and add a subdivision surface to. I think 3 on both of these. Viewport and render should be good. Let's tab into edit mode here. And let's go ahead and make some slices just by hitting Control or Command R, depending on if you're in the PC or not. I'm gonna make sure these are not too harsh of edges, just because ice cubes sometimes have harsh edges, but they're not incredibly harsh. Okay, it's looking all right. I'm just gonna GZ1, move that up to the plane. Okay, and I'm also gonna go into proportional editing, grab some vertices and move them just a little bit. I'm also just going to add 2 more loop cuts here just so I can move in and out the middle. That one here too. Just gives us a little bit more movement. And just making little touch movements. It is a cube, not a complicated thing to model. Okay, so that is an odd looking cube. I'm gonna right click and hit shade smooth there. I kind of like it from this angle. So now we're going to start shading it. I'm just gonna get a shader editor going here. Move this into, we want to make sure we are in cycles, render. I'm going to use an HDRI while we are creating the shader. So to do that, there is a link in the description for HDRI havens. You could use any of them. I am using this one I have on my computer right now called the Garden Nook. So yeah, find one you like and use it. Also, I have the Node Wrangler plugin enabled. There's a ton of tutorials on how to do that, so if you need it, look up how to enable that. I'm just moving my environment so we're front lit, which actually I'm going to go side lit from the right while we're creating the material. And then I'm just going to go back to the object material here. I'm going to turn this transmission all the way up so you see that going on. Then I'm going to create a noise texture. So you just click Shift A and noise texture. And we are going to plug this directly into surface just to see what kind of noise we're getting. I'm going to turn the detail up to something like 14 and then scale this down a little bit. Maybe scale it up a tiny bit, maybe somewhere in between like 2.5. So I'm just kind of looking, this is going to be kind of a frostiness of the ice. So I'm just looking at what the noise texture is providing directly on the surface. So I'm actually going to go ahead and plug the FAC into the roughness and plug that back into the surface. Okay. So what we can do to make this a little bit more contrasty is put a color ramp there. And actually before we do this, I have the node wrangler again, so Control T, and we will have this up. I'm actually going to make this object instead of generated. And I know these can be slightly different. I'm on Mac, so you might get different results, but it should be the same. So to just up the intensity on what we're seeing from the noise, I'm going to bring these closer to one another until I get a result I like a little bit more. So that's feeling a little bit more icy to me. Maybe a little bit further away. Something like that. And the other thing that's going to help this a lot is adding a bump to this. So we're going to take the same noise texture and plug it into a new color ramp right here. And then we are actually going to plug this color ramp into a bump node. And the color goes into the height, not the normal. And the normal goes into the normal. Okay, so that looks crazy right now, but I'm gonna bring this black guy down. And then the white dude it's really intense, obviously, so maybe 0.0. Something like that. It's a little bit better. So we have that. And I'm actually going to duplicate this. If you click on one and hit Shift D, you will duplicate it. And what I can do is actually plug this normal into this one, this normal into this one, and now we're going to mix two noise textures. So I'm just going to copy this one. And then once again, plug the color into the height. So now we have two noise textures going on. I'm going to turn down the scale on this one to 1, and then bring up the roughness on this a little bit. So you can see when I add that, it's subtle, but it is adding a little bit more noise generated throughout. I'm actually going to make this one 0.01 to make it a little bit stronger. Let's see how long we go for. Okay. So that looks bright to me. Okay, so I think that's kind of it as far as the texture goes. I'm going to save this. Yeah, it's this cube. 1. Save. Okay, so there you have kind of an ice texture. What we have going on here, just to recap, is the roughness is being controlled by this noise texture that's clamped by a color ramp. And then the same noise texture is controlling a bump map And then we have another larger noise that is being added together with those bump maps, and that's what we have into the normal. And then we have an ice cube. I think the next step is creating an environment for this. So I'm going to go ahead and add a camera. If you go to view, so that was in view, camera to view. I can then center that. I'm going to go into my camera settings. I'm adding depth of field, and I'm going to focus on the ice cube. I'm going to stand at 1.8. And I think I'm good with the rest of it. So I am gonna add a plane now, RX90, rotate it 90 degrees, GY, move it back, scale it up, S, and drag. Okay, so now we have this plane behind it. What I did in my initial one was I created a wave kind of texture. So all you have to do there is add a wave texture. And you plug this in here. Control T with the Node Wrangler add-on to create the mapping nodes. If you rotate these, you can get them out in the direction you want them. And then you can also scale them up, so like the lower numbers will actually make them larger. So 1.3 seems about right to me. And then I like to distort them a little bit, kind of get some weird. And then you can kind of see what they would look like if they're animated. So this is cool because you get waves behind the ice. But if you want to control the colors on them, you can pop a color ramp in here. And if you change linear to constant, you will get some cooler shapes. Or some sharp, harder lines is what I should say. I'm just gonna turn off camera view. And then also hit Command B and only render out right here. So this is cool, and you can pick a cool color. So maybe some kind of navy blue. And then you could make the white maybe like a, I don't know, whatever you want, like a light green. Or maybe just keep it white. Then add in like a cyan kind of color. It's kind of what I had on my last one. It's kind of cool. I like these being little stripes. And the other thing you can do is you can actually take this and control the roughness with it. But you will see those, so I just selected the cube and hit H, which hides it. But you see the dark blues get a little bit more reflective, which I actually think I might like for this one. I was gonna say, if you wanted them to be less reflective, you could put another color ramp in and then make the black like a grayish color, which is basically harsh black would be the roughest, and then white would be, or no, white would be the roughest, harsh black would be the least rough. So you could just kind of narrow the gauge there. But I'm just gonna leave it like that, kind of like that. And so you can see we're still reflecting some of the environment, which is cool if you want to do that. I kind of like, cutting out the environment a little bit. So I'm actually gonna duplicate it and have two of them back to back, and maybe even a third one rotate. Ooh, that's reflecting on itself. Don't actually mind that. I scaled it up so that it would cover the whole span of it. I am thinking though, the shader editor, if we go to the world, I'm actually going to turn the world off, which is going to make everything dark. And I'm going to add in some lights. So I'm going to go with, I'm going to try and get a light over here on the side. I'm actually going to turn down the spread of that so it is not hitting the walls as much. I'm going to turn that up to like 60. Let's try it at 200. And then let me add another one. And I like to work with area lights personally. So this one's going to be a little bit more diffused. So I'm scaling it larger, and I'm just going to make it something. I'm going to scale this one down because I don't want it to be diffused. Something like that, but maybe even more powerful, honestly. So I like this. I also want to get a light behind this guy so he's backlit. So take this down to 70. See-through things tend to look good backlit. Because you want to see the light come through them. So once again, I'm going to take the spread down on that guy and turn him up to something higher. So you can see when we add that backlight, it is creating a lot of cool texture inside the cube. Turn this up. And then I'm actually curious if I could just use this to oops, that was not centered at all. So that's kind of interesting. So if we light the background and then backlight the cube, we're going to create a lot of cool contrast there. So I'm thinking that's actually looking pretty cool. I think the only thing that's weird, so you start to see the light right here. If I move it up, you don't see the reflection on the light anymore. So my personal preference there is to kind of not see that as much. Here's what happens if we really bump this up. If we bring this down to 45, yeah, so you can see that's not lighting the background as much. I'm gonna let it hit the right side of the background. I think that gradient's cool. I'm just gonna turn this up a little bit more. Yeah, so that's kind of how I created that. The last thing I did was animated it. Just want to organize a little bit here. Do a new collection, move all these in here, lights in there, camera in there. Just gonna call this one Studio. And then I'll create one for our backgrounds. Just call it BG. And then I'll just put this one nice. Okay, so the last thing I did was I animated it. This is where I want it to be when it is at its highest point in the air. And then I will move it out of frame down like that. And I'll just make it even. I'll do 20, and then I'll have it end at 40, so I can just copy that first frame. Command C, Command V to copy and paste the keyframe. So it moves up, moves down, and then to control the speed that it's moving, I'm going to go to the graph editor. I'm going to isolate the Z location and then commit, select ease in and out, and then go to a quintic easing strength. And it actually seems kind of fast to me. So I'm going to go, what am I doing? I'm doing a horizontal split. So I have the graph open and also the timeline open. So I'm actually going to spread these out. I'm going to go 30, 60. So that seems a little bit better. I actually think maybe exponential or it's circular. I don't know, that feels a little weird to me. Maybe not that one, maybe exponential. Wonk, wonk, yeah, that feels better. So an exponential on an ease in and out. And honestly, this doesn't start until probably frame 15. No, 12, all right. Yeah, so it looks like we enter frame on like 13 or something. And end on 47. So that's the movement animation. And then I'm also going to animate the shading. So you have a few things in the object that you can animate to make it get kind of frosty. Get it frosty in there. So first I'm gonna, okay. So the things you can animate to animate it getting frosty include this color ramp that's going into roughness, so you can move this down and we'll make it less frosty. Other things are the strength of these two bumps. So if you put these both at 0, you're not gonna have any bump. Actually, maybe we want more bump. I don't know. The amount of bump you want is a personal decision. 0.03. And so we want all these here at our highest point, or maybe a little bit later. So maybe they start, maybe right here it's like not bumpy, and then it gets like bumpy, and then, or frosty, and then goes down. So I'm guessing this is its frostiest. I'm just gonna get it where I want it on the frosty. The frosty meter. So I'm gonna click I on this position for the black marker here. I'm also gonna hover over strength here and hit I, hover over strength here and hit I. So now, with these three selected, I should have all of those right there. So then if I go back here, I want this position to be right here. So we don't have as much frost. And then I'm going to turn the strength to 0. I, strength to 0. I just hit O. What does O do? I don't know. Undid that. Strength to 0 and then I. So you can see, wink, wonk. So pretty simple animation. I think the only other thing I did on mine was I did a rotation. And then I also animated the background, which are pretty simple to do. To animate the background, actually mimicked the animation I did on here. So all I did was mark the face offset, and then moved it down slightly, marked it there, and then copied this keyframe. And so I then can look at where I have these. So I think it's 0 and 60, and then just matched that keyframe look. So ease in and out, exponential. And now we have a background that moves, but it seems to move a lot. So maybe we don't, so it looks like 15, so maybe it just goes to like 10 or something. Try to replace that keyframe. And then just copy this here and make sure it's exponential, ease in and out. Okay, that seems reasonable. And then I think that's pretty much it. I think I did some rotation on mine, but that's pretty much just the same thing that we already did on movement, just adding rotation. Cool, well, that's all.